I'm Grace Davies. I work in public health for the council. I have worked there for 26 years, not just in public health, but I've worked in environmental health and sustainability team, and now public health. So Chrissie's asked me to talk a little bit about how public health has worked with procurement particularly, and what changes we've been able to make. So I will share my screen, and then one of the beauties of this is you don't have to look at me quite so intently. Wonder whether you can see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see a screen that says healthy eating and public sector procurement of food and catering?
Yes, we can.
You can. How about, can you still see it now?
We can see something that says new to working from home.
Right. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop share and try again. Because otherwise you may not. Right, let's try one more time. I had it on my second screen and it didn't quite work out. Let's try this. Right, I shall start the slideshow. How is that? Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Okay, I will carry on as I realise we're using up time here. So I don't know how much experience you have of Public Health England, but I'll just start off by kind of giving the remit for our work in public health is very much comes from Public Health England. So for those that aren't aware of that body, it's an executive agency of the Department of Health and Social Care, and their role is basically to protect and improve our health and well-being and reduce health inequalities. And health inequalities are the real significant thing that's really evident across the whole country. So we work in public health in Bristol very closely with Public Health England. And for the next 4 years of their strategy, even though they are being disbanded in April, that's another story, but it will be picked up by the Department of Health. One of their main priorities, one of 10, is healthier diets and healthy weight across the nation. So really, healthy eating is really high up on the agenda. So in Bristol, the approach we're taking is very much a one system, sort of whole city approach, because we have the one city plan. Lots of our work is embedded in that. And it's really key for us that we change food environment. Alongside that we tackle food equality, food poverty, and we're building a sustainable food system. So these things have to happen together. So many of you will be very aware anyway of the media coverage on all of this, but unhealthy weight and obesity is a really significant health issue. Loads of poor health outcomes. I won't go into those, but there's lots of material available. Don't be scared off by this slide. Is it's really just an illustration of the fact that it's all very well to say we want people to be a healthy weight, to live healthy lifestyles, but they reckon there are 200 or more influencing factors over how healthy people are in terms of their weight and activity. And mapping them and how they work together is a science in itself. But just looking on the right side of this screen here, there's a very big area of that. Obviously it's the food environment, it's the options, it's the food procurement that's going on, it's the retail, that it's all around food as expected. So this is where, you know, the links that we have to have with food procurers and food environments is really important in public health. You might recognise some of these things on here. Lots of national publications, lots of local ones. That's only just a tiny bit that's influencing the decisions we make about how do we make our food environments healthier. How do we encourage people to eat better? How do we embed it across our systems? I'm going to talk a little bit about one of them because it's been really significant in Bristol. It's what we call a good food procurement policy, which the fact it's a policy, it means it's gone through a process in local government, which means it's been adopted and it's there to stay. The mayor, the cabinet had to approve it, but it took a long time, as Chrissie will be well aware, to actually get to the stage of having it approved. And it's made a real fundamental difference to the decisions we make with procurement of food and catering. Just a little bit of history on that. It really started over 10 years ago in Bristol, where we had the Good Food Charter. We had such a number of bodies and interest groups and organisations who wanted to see food environments and the whole food system much more sustainable and much healthier. So a number of national things happened that have impacted. We had the DEFRA plan for public procurement, that was 7 years ago now. We've had an active West of England sustainable food procurement group that's gone on for a number of years, and we've supported each other in the decision makings in our local areas. We've had Sustainable Food City Award 2016, that was silver. We've obviously got a gold application that's going in soon for Bristol too. We had various other policies, all that kind of supported the fact that if, as a public institution, Bristol City Council could make a policy that underpinned some consistent standards around healthy food procurement as well as sustainable food procurement, we could be ticking lots of boxes here. So that was the background. It very much involved a massive consultation exercise. That one's got not much on it, has it? Oh, I see. So the consultation exercise started with some of these earlier things around the food charter. Then it had to go to various council meetings, linking with cabinet members, various workshops where we got together staff, some of you on this meeting here, people from schools, facilities management, museums, other types of catering across the council, markets, trading standards, food safety, obviously procurement itself, all had to start conversations about how can we make this happen, how can we agree. We have different priorities. Public health's about health, procurement's about value for money and meeting lots of other criteria. So it was a real juggling exercise, but we did a lot of consultation and working groups, and eventually came out with this policy that was agreed. It does need reviewing, and we recognise that. We've got obviously changes in European directives that don't apply. But basically the procurement policy is based on using two tools. One of them being the Soil Association, I think it's still called the Food for Life Served Here, which is used by many caterers. And that sets standards around health and about sustainability. So schools and contracts like that have found that helpful in their specifications. The museums contract, an M-Shed in Bristol is a big contract, and that standard was used for that one. We also have our own local Bristol Eating Better scheme, and that's been a really good tool for engaging with a whole range of other catering outlets. Particularly markets, street traders, cafes. So this doesn't just apply to public procurement. This Bristol Eating Better obviously has been used across the city in other areas. But when we started in 2018 with this policy, we asked for the bigger contracts to have at least the silver. Most of them went for gold of the Food for Life. And the smaller contracts, they only had to have the Bristol Eating Better at gold level. And obviously we had some direct catering through our parks as well. And they also had gold. We've also got well, I'll move on. Actually, I've got a slide on this. But this actually tells you a little bit more. Some of you may be aware of these settings. Contracts and concessions. It impacted our direct catering. Licensing and consent and markets has been an interesting one, because obviously there's slightly different processes involved in procurement for some of these settings. And what markets chose to do was to actually write it into their application process, so that if you wanted a market stall, you had to, on your application, ensure that you had applied for a Bristol Eating Better award and had that and achieved that level before you were offered a stall. Events, that's obviously been very curtailed this last year, but we had been working on them to get that into the food offers at events as well. Licensing, we're still working with street trading to get it into the street trading policy, and there is a will for that to happen, but obviously there's a process. Parks are very much engaged with us, so concessions in parks and park outlets also fulfilling the policy. So yes, that's just illustrating the market. Street trading events are very much been working. They started off with using the bronze standard, and it's really engaged lots of the stall holders and given them a way of improving not just the food offer, but the quality and taking pride in what they're doing to support a healthier city. You can find out more about the Bristol Eating Better Award if you don't know yet. There are web pages, but it's basically 10 objectives. Most of them are to do with health, but significant number are also to do with sustainability, working with your local economy, your local area, supporting others. There's a whole range of criteria that apply to it. And our One City plan very much has targets around using this policy and this particular award. So by 2028, 90% of applicable catering businesses have achieved that award. So that's quite a big target. And very much over the next 10 or so years, that the food environment actually offers healthy choices that are accessible and affordable for everyone. So this is improving the health and sustainability of our environments that support reduction in food poverty, as well as many other things. I've just put that one up because Going for Gold, which probably a number of you are very aware of, that we're applying for this year. Buying better, so food procurement has very much been a part of that, and what we've been trying to do with this policy has very much been embracing a lot of these things as well. Obviously, eating better, food equality are all part of that. So that is a whistle-stop tour through the main things that come to mind on working with procurement. I think there might be a couple of minutes for any questions, and I might not have covered everything. So Chrissie said she would ask me any questions on bits she thought I might have missed. So I shall stop sharing. I don't know if your sound's working now, Chrissie.
Can anyone hear me?
Oh yes, perfect.
Excellent, hooray. Thank you, Grace, thank you so much. No, I think we're pretty much covered on that one. I think perhaps the partnerships that were made within Bristol City Council when developing the good food policy were absolutely crucial to driving some of the work forward within the council. Am I right there, Grace?
Yes, absolutely. That was the bit that really you had to spend time on, because understanding each other's agendas, if you like, and seeing what procurement issues they had to face, and understanding that and being able to perhaps compromise on some things or understand the value and the benefits of how you could work together. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of across the board and all sort of kind of procurement stuff, and hence kind of the reasons why we're having this kind of influences on procurement, food procurement webinars that we're doing, because I think there's a misconception that procurement team is the only people who do procurement, when actually quite often they're the last team that comes in quite often at the last moment. But actually there's so much else going on. And I think Bristol Council was amazing, like for sort of like 12, 15 different teams coming together to influence the food policy. So yeah, Grace, thank you very much. That's fine. Apologies for my microphone. I appear to be back. I don't know what happened. We were chatting quite happily before the session started and before we let anybody in. So my apologies for that. And I'll just take 2 seconds to say what I was going to say. And that was a welcome to the session. Let me kind of quickly share my screen 1 second. I just want to show you something. And this is the second in a series of webinars that we're doing in terms of kind of the influences of what we're doing. This is healthy eating, obviously. And I'd just like to say, thank you to the speakers who are here today. Obviously, Grace has been here already. Thank you to the guys who are attending, but also thank you to our supporters as well. I'm working with the South West Food Hub around the West of England, and that's very much funded at the moment by the West of England Combined Authority. So as one of the key partners and supporters of this under the healthy eating, under the future food framework work that we're doing. So yes, and I'm Chrissie Storry, in case you hadn't realised. Apologies for that. A bit of a rush to start with. I'd like to move on to the second person in that case is Philip Shelley, Chair of the NHS Food Review, looking at healthy eating and food procurement from a very different perspective than public health, even though they both say health in the title, but from the kind of NHS bit as well. So Phil, over to you.
Thanks, Christine, and Grace, thank you as well. It was great to hear about what's happening in Bristol. We hear lots of good things, and I spoke to a couple of chefs recently about some of the things they're doing around the city of Bristol, and certainly recent times have been very challenging, but they've got some great incentives and some innovation stuff going on there. So I'm keeping an eye on the future to see what happens. So thanks for sharing what you did. Today's a chance. I thought for most of you probably not had much opportunity to hear about the food review, but also I just want to link into some of the things that we're trying to do through the recommendations that obviously touch on our healthy food and life balance, plus also the challenges around procurement for us in the NHS. But I wanted to give a bit of a broader brushstroke, if that's okay. So the summer 2019 was a difficult year in the sense of we had an issue around listeria, where 7 patients tragically died after eating contaminated hospital sandwiches. And as you can imagine, that starts to ask a lot of questions about the way we prepare, the way we produce, the way we purchase, the way we audit. Matt Hancock, Secretary of State, announced a root and branch review of food, of not only food served in hospitals, but sold as well. This gave us the ability to widen the scope and look at the safety, nutrition, the quality, production methods, and not just for patients, but for staff and visitors across NHS hospitals in England. First of all, you have to agree a suitable panel, which you hope would identify appropriate association and organizational membership. So for example, Hospital Catering Association, British Dietetic Association, Food Standards Agency, Public Health, for example. What you don't want to be is cumbersome. You know, you want to be challenging, but you also want some freedom. So we wanted core members on that panel, for example, nurses that were actually working in hospitals, not people that had retired and were looking in, but people that were actually at ward level, and they had a real sense of what they felt food was like serving to our patients, and also the availability of food for staff, but also catering and dietetic colleagues, to ensure that we had a clear and practical identity of what was happening in hospitals right now. As expected, we all love food. That's why we're on this call today, but everybody has a view when it comes to food. They also have a view when it comes to directional change. So there's no doubt that I had to sort of make that time about listening, around absorbing the sort of the variance of views that was going to happen. If I spent lots of time listening and absorbing, then I hope that I could write a report that had depth and it had purpose, knowing that one size does not fit all. You know, Myles is here today, and he'll talk to you around the variances in school food, and we have the same in hospitals. There isn't one way to make things happen, and we have to take that into consideration, whether that's contracted in-house, whether it's a different region of the country. So leading change in any sector, of course, is going to be stimulating. The public sector is often described as immovable. So for me, it felt as the ultimate challenge. And to have any chance of success and progression, there needs to be inclusion. So we had to include clinical, allied health professionals, caterers, appropriate associations, because that was the essential part of making them feel that they were part of that change. That involvement must continue. So ensuring that either food or non-food suppliers and FM contractors who have got such an influence on the management of healthcare actually come with us on the reforms that are required. If they don't feel part of that change, it's really difficult to instigate it. It's great that Jeanette Ory's on the line today, and she will remember that site visits are fascinating with hospitals, and she was with me on one of the large acute sites because we went to Nottingham. We also went to Newcastle, Guy's and St Thomas's. We also went to mental health, so we went to Broadmoor, West London, the community hospitals around Gloucester and Sussex. It was important for both myself and the panel members to have an open mind when visiting sites. But there were a number of points that we needed to consider. So, for example, the quality of food being produced in hospitals with a range of systems that are in place throughout the country, I believe that standards were very high, probably higher than I was anticipating. Of course, there were elements that need to be improved. But understanding the variance of procuring through the different regions automatically generates questions. You're looking at the balance of national frameworks versus local produce. And this is typical within the NHS. Conversations also took place on sites, and it brought an openness from the teams. And when you know as a team that there are challenges ahead and there might be a possible shift of direction, you know, I was really encouraged that leaders were keen to engage and teams were open to the debate around the future. Probably the most disappointing element around visiting these sites were kitchens and retail areas in need of refurbishment and repair. And this was either structural issues or this was dated equipment that hadn't been supported in that refurbishment. So that does tend to dictate decision making around the future. What we did experience is that there was a consistent pride and loyalty in production, in teamwork, in the way we present foods, and the way that teams communicated with each other. You know, understanding that hospitality is no more important than it is in hospital, with menus kind of reflecting a seasonality as well as a taste that represents the region. We often say, you know, as a patient, when you're in a place like Taunton in Somerset, you want to see a menu that reflects this region, because if you were at home, you would be eating something that you recognize and that you enjoy. We all know it's been testing times, and the NHS, of course, has stood very tall, and the public have been awe in all of our key workers throughout the country. What continued to develop is that good food became even more important for those patients becoming ill with COVID. It's a necessary medicine if we want to empower recovery. There was also a stronger focus on staff health and well-being because it was flagged as essential if we're going to drive motivation and supportiveness within teams. And although there has been a continual pressure across both clinical and support teams, I believe there's been a real drive to display a quality choice in retail areas under the COVID restrictions. We've been able to celebrate success when appropriate. We've tried to promote quality and fresh food, keep introducing changes in menus so we stimulate engagement. We need strong leadership, but with compassion. And we need to keep communicating with our patients as an incentive for them to make the good choices around food and to help them eat so it aids their recovery. Working closely with so many colleagues, associations and organizations has strengthened the core of the review, and it's ensured that we are aligned with specialist teams. I had a couple of meetings with Henry Dimbleby and his team, and we both agreed that procurement in the public sector can often be stifled. His experience through the school food plan replicates many of the challenges for the NHS. And it's important that we learn appropriately and we don't replicate any failures. Purchasing is a critical element of food choice. The NHS promotes, but not always follows, the balanced scorecard of 60% quality versus 40% cost. The pressures on catering teams to provide savings year on year should be abolished. Any savings should be used to enhance quality or reinvested for innovation. For those of you who don't know, the review has outlined 8 key recommendations which are supported by a chief exec checklist, and this reinforces the governance of progress. So just a quick overview: catering staff support. So how can we attract and motivate chefs in healthcare? Because we know that's challenging. You know, we'd like to enhance our current structures and introduce opportunities to celebrate success in a wider way. Nutrition, hydration. We want every trust to have a food service dietitian responsible for overseeing patient, staff, and visitor catering.
Healthy eating and food procurement, Southwest.
To support the role outside of clinical responsibilities. And for food safety, of course, with what happened with Listeria, it's important that we have a nominated food safety specialist and a named board member responsible for food service safety. And as I mentioned, visiting the sites, it was obvious that we need to provide funding to upgrade our hospital kitchens, to ensure there is a provision for ward kitchens so that 24/7 service can be provided for everyone, from a hot drink and a snack in the middle of the night to 24/7 meals for new mums in a maternity ward. We want every hospital to implement a digital meal ordering system by 2022 to ensure that safe ordering and mapping to patients' care plans has a focused agenda. And how do we enforce standards to ensure that there's a strength around the recommendation that can be supported by the Secretary of State with secondary legislation? And sustainability and waste. Well, there's enormous inconsistency with purchasing high quality products, and we need to understand the role of sustainability. And setting up an expert group is really important if we want to carry that on. I'll share that with you now. Drafting recommendations has enabled us to widen our perspective. Major transformation can often cost money, but the biggest shift is in our culture. The NHS endeavours to provide a platform for assurance. What we must also do is use that platform as a springboard for change, a change that can make a difference for all of us. It's difficult to quantify success, but I have always believed that what we can achieve is almost immeasurable if we have the appropriate skill mix with suitable investment. The NHS is a beacon of light in such challenging times. It's only right that we share the public the skills that our chefs and caterers produce. And there is a desire and a backing to have regional and national competitions for NHS Chef Team of the Year. What we must do is drive the ambition to make it happen. And that should be released in the next 6 weeks. And finally, what we have discovered through this time of COVID is that kindness for each other has been a driving theme. And I'm sure that all of us would like that to happen and to continue. Personal hygiene and family safety has risen to the forefront. All of us involved in the service of food, whether in public or private sector, in cafes, in restaurants and schools, understand the key role that we play in society. The last few months has woken the public's awareness of what we do, how we do it, and what we require if we are to drive standards to a level that we can be proud of. I've met a number of managers and caterers that are natural innovators. They're driving change in their hospitals and trusts, and above all, show fantastic leadership qualities, and this needs to be shared and promoted. People will criticize this recent attempt to fundamentally change the quality of hospital food. They often say to me, what is the difference between this review and others? My answer to them is that this review is being driven from within the NHS, not from the outside. We mustn't wait for someone else to do it. Now is the time. I hope that helps to give you an overview of what we've been trying to do over the last 18 months.
Phil, that was great. Thank you very much indeed. Very useful. So yes, thank you indeed. And there's a lovely comment in the chat for you to have a look at from Jeanette. Thank you very much. I would like to hand over to Myles now, looking at the kind of school food it's provided. Philip referred to it. So if I could hand over to Myles Bremner to carry on from there. Thank you. I think, Myles, you've got, yes, you have. Thanks.
Great. Chrissie, thank you very much. And I hope that you can all see my screen, and I will just start the presentation now. And I can promise you that's the only animation in the few slides that I have. What I'd like to do in the next 10 minutes is to provide some context of the fundamental role that good procurement policy and good procurement practice and good procurement review plays in ensuring that our children are fed well. But I want to start by just being slightly frustrated and slightly annoyed because sometimes it seems to me that our media and our social media and our Twitter extravaganza sort of suggests that nothing has changed. And the furore and the hyperbole and the anger that has recently been exposed with the food parcel gate picture on the right-hand side is kind of just the same as the furore and the anger raised so many years ago with Jamie Oliver and the dreaded turkey Twizzler. So one could be, excused for thinking that perhaps nothing has changed in the world of school food, but actually a lot has changed in the world of school food, and every single day a workforce larger than the Royal Navy are in our schools cooking delicious school meals to millions of children to exacting and tough school food standards that are over and above many other different health and sustainability standards that exist in lots of other different catering environments. And yet somehow our focus often comes back unfairly to that picture of, you know, food parcel gate or, you know, chips through the railings or whatever it happens to be, rather than actually rightly celebrating the amazing journey spearheaded by Jeanette Orry and others through Food for Life and so many different organisations stimulating schools to understand that great effective leadership by the head teacher, recognising the importance of embedding food as part of a whole school approach and treating children at the centre of what we're trying to do is what will drive a great school food culture. But yet perhaps we do know that there are challenges inherent in the system. And, you know, whilst I can be as angry as I like about the Chartwell's food parcel gate scandal, there are some systemic challenges that exist, absolutely exacerbated by COVID, as COVID has done to expose the weaknesses in social inequalities, but challenges that I think in the school food system have existed for a number of years and that had been exacerbated through the kind of austerity period, which has weakened school food policy and practice, governance and accountability. And if you put that within the context also that current school food policy, procurement and practice is fragmented, not only in the different types of school food operations you may have, whether it's the school managing their activities in-house or whether they are part of a large group local authority contract, schools themselves are dealing with a whole range of different touch points around school food, from breakfast clubs through to how to deal with food ingredients for cooking lessons, through to how schools engage with holiday feeding programs, what they do with the school fruit and vegetable scheme, let alone free school meals or universal infant free school meals. And so schools themselves are faced with lots of different kind of touch points around school food. And it can be challenging to ensure that we're always putting the child at the centre. National government spends a lot. And whilst there are no collective figures, these have been brought together through a wide number of different documents. National government is allocating over £1.3 billion a year. And then you add on top local and school funding, you can see the size of the market, which we really need to ensure is delivering best value for children's health and nutrition. Over the last few months, I have been commissioned by Guy's and St Thomas's Charity to work with a wide number of organisations to map what is currently going on in school food funding, policy and practice. And the group of expert organisations made up of caterers and education practitioners and school bodies looked at the wide range of different school food interventions and summarised a number of cross-cutting themes that affected the ability for schools to absolutely ensure delivering maximum value for money. The funding is complex, fragmented, and inconsistent. There are strange perversities within the funding flows. For example, free universal infant free school meals provided to all 5, 6, and 7-year-olds in this country are based on the number of children taking up a meal on 2 days in the year. And yet schools pay over for their school food based on the actual take up throughout the whole year. And whilst no school at all will want to stop any child from taking a school meal, is it right that sort of there are no accountability mechanisms that sort of track and record the actual performance of schools delivering great school meals, as opposed to just sort of focusing it all just on 1 or 2 days? Schools have also reported that they find the whole world of catering, contracting, confusing and challenging. And as school business managers, they are really wanting to have sort of better understanding and better clarity, better training, support and guidance on what does good look like when they are determining how they should organize their school food activities, how they should find the best arrangements, and then really importantly, how they should manage and work in effective partnership with their caterers to ensure best value for money. So I would argue that procurement absolutely is not this sort of perfunctory process that sits within sort of good school food. It is good school food and good procurement, when recognized that it can only happen with good funding mechanisms and good, clear transparency about funding, and then effective mechanisms and activities around ensuring that schools are able to feed back and report back on how they are using their funding and how they have arranged their school food sort of activities in a way that is best meeting the needs of their children. So the group sort of have come together with, the group have come up with a series of recommendations, not only looking at how funding can be better dished out to schools, and how better accountability can be put into place, but looking specifically at how school food procurement can be improved. And as Philip outlined in his presentation just now, the focus on ensuring that good procurement looks at value in its widest context of the different quality value mechanisms, as opposed to just cost mechanisms, and hopefully ensuring that national policy framed by the work of the National Food Strategy will ensure that benchmarking of a quality threshold, and by ensuring that schools understand the benefit that effective procurement can bring on social value, on supporting resilient local economies, on driving environmental sustainability, can be delivered if and when school business managers and their head teachers are able to access and understand sort of what they can do, how good procurement works, being able to access relevant guidance, but also having that training and their support for schools. So I just want to finish by going back, forgive me for zooming through. At the moment, one could argue we have a bit of a leaky bucket in the school food system. There is lots of debate about who should be entitled to receive free school meals, and rightly so. It's an important part of the tackling social justice and inequality agenda. But we also know that the leaky bucket means that too many kids are missing out, that quality is inconsistent, and that money is not always accounted for. Good, effective procurement really can and should be at the centre of further transforming our school food system so that we can ensure that a good school food culture really does improve the health and well-being chances for all of our nation's children. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting. And yes, some clear similarities as well between previous speakers. So thank you very much. It was great. Right, I'm going to move on. We've had our three kind of health and procurement speakers. These sessions are brought together under the work around the Future Food Framework. I'll just, for those of you who don't know it, I will just quickly go into it. Literally just one quick slide to kind of pull things together and to wrap this up. That's not me. That's me. No, that's me. So the Future Food Framework is something that the Crown procurement arrangement, the Crown Commercial Service are putting together. And we've been working with them through another body for 2 or 3 years now, trying to get something moving forward. And I'm just going to quickly, in those kind of 5 columns, outline what it is. The Future Food Framework, for some people, is actually quite difficult to say, but it's just kind of something that's encapsulating what CCS and others are trying to work on. And fundamentally, it's 3 interrelated contracts, which will eventually provide a really good work together as a cohesive procurement arrangement for primarily fresh produce to begin with. So meat, dairy, bakery, fish, fruit and veg. I think I've missed something out of that. But again, but after that, it'll work with other commodities to come on board as well. And the idea is to bring these contracts together to make it one really easy, accessible package, both for procurers and for suppliers as well. The 3 contracts is the beating heart is really the technical platform for which everything goes through, a logistics capability, and then a dynamic purchasing system for the actual produce itself. And Crown Commercial Service are the who behind it. So they will own this arrangement, and they are working on getting the documents together, the tenders together, and pulling it all together to start the tender processes. And it'll be their contracts. It may, even though we call it the Future Food Framework, it doesn't actually sound like it belongs to any one particular group, but it actually is a Crown Commercial Service contract. And for those who aren't quite sure, Crown Commercial Service is the government procurement executive body working with that. As I mentioned earlier, I'm working with the South West Food Hub, and you've seen those logo on all the screens. So the South West Food Hub are working with Crown Commercial Service to do the public sector and the supplier engagement to get both sides on board. So very much working hand in hand at the moment. And really, why do we need such an arrangement for food, a contracting arrangement for food? Well, supply chains at the moment tend to be, not always, but generally are relatively inflexible, fairly static, not very transparent, and can be incredibly long. And this particular way of contracting is we're looking to literally turn that on its head, to make it dynamic through the dynamic purchasing system, flexible, transparent, and by using local suppliers, bringing it to that shorter supply chain as well. It's very much encouraging the SME producers and suppliers into the public sector. There's a lot of kind of the top end of the M suppliers, so the large and medium, but the smaller ones and the micro ones really find it quite difficult to come into procurement. So trying to make it accessible for them. I was going to use easy, but that's not the word I really want. I want accessible. And through that, supporting local economies, keeping jobs in place, some of the COVID recovery, but also kind of that local multiplier effect on money going around as well. Then obviously there's the environmental and welfare benefits and welfare in terms of animal welfare and soil welfare, which is so absolutely critical to us moving forward. And then access by procurers to local sustainable and healthier produce, which is, they're not always hand in hand. And interesting enough, public health drives quite a lot of this work, but it doesn't mean to say because it's local, it's actually healthier, but actually what we're trying to do is trying to get that whole balance in place and how we can make that accessible by having those suppliers available. The how, it's going to be a 1-year pilot in the Southwest. The Crown Commercial Service decided about 18 months ago that the Southwest was going to be their pilot area. That will kick off quite soon. I'll go into the timing in a second. And the reason why the Southwest is that back in 3 or 4 years ago, Bath and North East Somerset Council did a smaller schools food contract on this very model. So there's proven experience in this region, but also that the range of suppliers and procurers in this area is kind of the right mix to start something off. So Southwest going from Gloucestershire down to Cornwall, taking some Wiltshire and Dorset as well. So kind of it's a big area. During that 1 year, there'll be ongoing evaluation by Crown Commercial Service, not so much for the value of produce going through, either by monetary or tonnage, but really making sure the processes and systems work and where they need to be tweaked. And following that will be a national rollout and a rollout through regions kind of on a staggered basis. So eventually the Future Food Framework will be something that we very much hope will cover most of the UK. And when? Well, the tender platform contract will go out. So the tender for the contract for that will go out in the spring, any moment now, hopefully in the next couple of months, with the logistics and the DPS going out after that with a go live in 2022. And 2022 sounds quite a long way away, but actually in terms of getting people on board, both procurers and suppliers on board, it's not that long. It seems to be an age getting to where we are at the moment, but it's building momentum as we speak. And one crucial thing, if you ever hear me talk about the Future Food Framework, this will always be something that pops up, and that success relies on both procurers and suppliers getting on board. If procurers aren't willing to look at this arrangement and start using it, then the suppliers won't get on board. And similarly, if suppliers aren't there, then procurers can't buy for them, which is why we're trying to engage both sides of it. Later on, there will be kind of the more tech webinars, engagement, and more kind of the hand-holding side of it on exactly how it works on the rest. But this is just a really brief overview. So mine is just literally that one slide. If you have any more questions on that or anything else, then please email me at chrissie@southwestfoodhub.co.uk or have a look at the website on the southwestfoodhub.uk as well. Greg Parsons and Ellen Davies, who are kind of probably on your little bar down the side, are also part of the Southwest Food Hub as well. And more information will be coming out on the timing of when the tenders go out for prospective contracts and the work that'll be engaged from there. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Sian from WECA. As I mentioned earlier, we're supported by a number of organisations of WECA for this particular region is one of them. Sian works in the Growth Hub and is part of the enterprise support. People have a massive amount of support packages around the rural kind of enterprise side as well. So I'm going to hand over to her. I'm going to share her presentation for her and take it from there. So bear with me. There we go.
Fabulous.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thank you for all these inspiring case studies. It's really fantastic to hear both national approaches and local approaches. So thanks so much for that. So I guess we've got a mixture of people on the webinar today. So some procurers, some from policy teams, potentially some food businesses and things like that as well. So West of England Growth Hub, we support all different businesses, but specifically today we'll talk about the food and rural. So we've done a variety of different support specifically for food businesses. So during COVID, we set up a regional task force for food and rural businesses to kind of feed back what was important in the food industry and became a voice of the food and rural industry. That was fed back to the overall regional task force, and that led to kind of policy changes, strategy changes, new projects to develop as a result of what people wanted. And we provide a whole host of support for businesses, so everything from bespoke business growth support. So we've seen a lot of food businesses come through that want to pivot, diversify, change. So many food and rural businesses that are maybe they've got land. So for example, farmers that have got different aspects within their food business. We've supported them to be able to kind of pivot, move forward with their different diversification strategies, start up, scale up, get support, get funding. We offer, all our support is fully funded as well. We offer Trading Better Online for businesses. So any businesses that need support with, it could be things like CRM development, website development, branding, marketing, strategy, a whole host of things. If they want to pivot and move online, then we can provide, we work with TechSpark and we can provide free support for that. Also SEO, we support with things like accountancy. So if food businesses, so we've noticed in particular in certain rural food businesses, if there's certain challenges around accountancy, maybe they don't have accountant, then we've got a free accountancy program that can help them with financial forecasting, planning for future. Maybe they want to adopt a particular tech app, and this can support them to do that, or just improve their systems. Potentially, maybe they've got one person that's busy doing the do and they need somebody externally to support with that. We also support with workforce of the future. So if people are shifting and pivoting and wanting to talk about upskilling their workforce, changing, developing their workforce, then we can provide some free support with that. We've had a lot of, again, food rural businesses come through that maybe they need to upskill themselves in digital. We work with a number of partners and can provide free digital support, access to programs, do needs analysis, and support with that strategy piece of helping them move forward with either current and new workforces. We also support with things like leadership management support. So we run various different programs, everything from peer networking to providing board members. So if they're going through innovation funding, for example, or doing a big shift and pivot after getting funding and they need support with that, then we can provide that. And we work with mentoring agencies, finance, so that's a big thing at the moment. So we've just launched one or about to launch actually a grant for businesses that want to pivot, and it's similar to the Business West grant. In essence, they will need to provide some match funding, but yeah, we can provide that to, it's not just for food businesses, but definitely food businesses can apply for that if they want to pivot the business and in some way to enable growth. We provide support with innovation, so we have specific innovation pots of funding. We can provide international support. We work really closely with the IPO, so if they're thinking of exporting and maybe they need some IP support, then we can help them with their IP international strategy to help them move forward, or attract funding, investors, etc. Environmental support, so if they need support with, it could be things like sustainability, sustainable packaging, green business grant, so maybe they want to move their business and become more sustainable, then we can support with that. Strengthening network, so we work with a whole series of partners, including things like FoodWorks. Probably many of you might know FoodWorks within the region, but as well as other specialists and businesses. So whatever, I guess, food businesses' main challenges are, we can either support, or we can find people that we work with and support in order to support them, whatever their biggest challenges are. We also can provide support with other referrals, so whether it's statutory support, if they've got quite niche questions, things linked to technical certificates in food and things like that. So yeah, so I think, Chrissie, are you going to email people after the session or something? So feel free to, if you've got any businesses within our region, the Southwest, that need support, then definitely feel free to pass them through to us and we'd be delighted to help. Yeah. That's some details as well, actually.
Yeah. Those are the details, and we'll be sharing all of that. So yeah, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. And really that comes the end of our session. We're a couple of minutes over, but I hope that's all right.